Hey everybody, welcome to the Ramble. I have something to show you. Many of you may have seen this already, but it's what I'm going to be spending the video talking about. It's a new feature on the website of the American Family Association. It's called the AFA Bigotry Map. And this is what it looks like right here. I'll show it to you. I have it up in my web browser. It is a Google map. And all those little flags are organizations that have been identified by the American Family Association as anti-Christian hate groups, anti-Christian bigotry groups. Now, you might be wondering, what do they mean by anti-Christian bigotry groups? Well, apparently what they mean is any group that is not a Christian group, or at least any group that advocates for anything other than fundamentalist Christianity in culture and politics. There's a lot of flags on this map, as you can see. And what I find very interesting is, first, if we go over here to the side in the About the Map section, it says the American Family Association has identified groups and organizations that openly display bigotry toward the Christian faith. Not just opposition, not just a contrary opinion, but bigotry. And they have these groups divided into 4 categories. And the 4 categories down here in the legend section, as you can see, are homosexual agenda, advocates for the legalization and promotion of same-sex marriage, and viciously attacks Christians who exercise their First Amendment right to voice support for God's plan for marriage as between one man and one woman. Those are the homosexual agenda groups, and you can select for those on the map. Those are all the homosexual agenda anti-Christian bigotry groups in the United States. There's also atheist groups, because of course to be atheist means that you are innately an anti-Christian bigot. You can't be an atheist without being a bigot toward Christians. Everybody knows that. These are all the atheist groups that are on the map. Atheists do not believe in God and are critical of those who express their faith in public, which, as we all know, is a form of bigotry. Then there are the humanist groups. Here they are with the little person, the men's room icon on their flags for some reason. Humanists believe critical thinking and physical evidence are the sole basis for beliefs. Humanists believe science triumphs faith in issues of morality and decision-making. Again, clearly this is a form of bigotry. And finally, groups that are anti-Christian, which it's odd that this gets its own subcategory, because according to the title of the map and the About section, really all of these organizations ought to be considered anti-Christian, but this is a specific subcategory called anti-Christian, and these groups are groups that actively engage in the complete eradication of the Christian faith from society, government, and private commerce. These groups file lawsuits and use intimidation to silence any reference to Christianity from the public square. So that is the 4 definitions of the types of anti-Christian bigotry groups that have been compiled and displayed in this very impressive looking anti-bigotry map by the American Family Association. You can sort for state on the map, and let's just go to my home state of Maryland. It'll zoom in automatically. And in the Maryland area, you can see here are the designated anti-Christian bigotry groups. Let's sort for anti-Christian, just the ones that are just flagrantly, virulently anti-Christian, not merely humanist or atheist or pro-gay, but anti-Christian. Here's one in the Washington, D.C. area. Actually, there are a few of them. If you zoom in really close, you can see that the flags kind of pile up on each other. There are 2 of them located in Washington, D.C., one of them here, Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Well, obviously, that would be a true anti-Christian hate group. And then here's another one, People for the American Way. Now, if you don't know what People for the American Way is, I have their website up in another tab here. People for the American Way is basically a liberal lobbying group. It's a progressive liberal advocacy group. They are not anti-Christian in any sense of the word, in any stretch of the imagination. In fact, if you hover over their issues link, religious liberty is one of the causes that People for the American Way really focuses on. And the reason why I think they have run afoul of the American Family Association is that the People for the American Way definition of religious liberty means a society in which everyone is equally free to practice their faith or to not have a faith. And that runs very contrary to the very ardently fundamentalist Christian view of religious liberty held by the American Family Association, which is basically the concept that Christians, and in specific the particular type of Christians that support the American Family Association, ought to be allowed to do whatever they want. That is their idea of religious liberty. And that, of course, is not religious liberty. In fact, that is a form of religious bigotry, saying that your religious beliefs should trump the beliefs and the civil rights of other people. That is not religious liberty. That is religious bigotry. And that is something that People for the American Way opposes. In this little side panel here, you can see they express it quite eloquently, I think. America's founders came to its shores in search of religious freedom. We're fighting to preserve Americans' freedom to worship or not as they choose, without fear of coercion or government interference. This is not an anti-religious group. This is not an anti-Christian group in any way. Yet there it sits on the anti-bigotry map, the anti-Christian bigotry map of the American Family Association, and in the anti-Christian category, no less. And that's just one example of how ridiculous these categories and these groups being selected as hate groups is. The American Family Association obviously is a very thin-skinned, very defensive organization. The main reason why I feel like this anti-bigotry map even exists is as a response, a very pathetic, very weak response to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which maintains its own list of what it considers hate groups. And I thought it would be fun because they have their own map, which came first, and as I say, is probably the main inspiration for this American Family Association map. They have their own map of what they consider to be hate groups, and I thought it would be fun to check out their map. This is the website of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And for those of you who aren't aware of the Southern Poverty Law Center, this is an organization that, unlike the American Family Association, is actually responsible for promoting real positive change in American culture. They've been around since the early 70s. They are an advocacy group that fights for racial civil rights, rights for immigrants, rights for disabled people, and rights for LGBT people. They are responsible for winning lawsuits that have bankrupted large organizations of the Ku Klux Klan. They are responsible for winning settlements in favor of people who've been discriminated against on the basis of disability or on the basis of sexual orientation. This is a real positive, significant group that fights for change in a way that affects people's lives for the better. They are the exact opposite of the American Family Association, which seeks to impose oppression and their form of religion and a very strident form of religious bigotry on other people. They have the Southern Poverty Law Center has their own hate map, and you can sort for state just as you can with the AFA's version. And I decided, once again, to sort for my home state of Maryland. And there are the little flags that mark the hate groups that are headquartered in the state of Maryland. These are Maryland-based hate groups, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. And you know how we had categories for the AFA map: anti-Christian, homosexual agenda, atheist, humanist, those atheists and humanists that are just innately bigoted against Christians. Well, the Southern Poverty Law Center has its own categories, and look at some of the categories for these groups that are headquartered in Maryland. Ku Klux Klan, white nationalist, racist skinhead, general hate, racist music, neo-Nazi, black separatist. These are very specific groups that seem, by definition, to be promoting hate and intolerance. It is not just, well, they disagree with us or they advocate for a different position, therefore they are bigoted and hateful. These are real hate groups. And one of the things that I think has really stuck in the craw of the AFA is, as I mentioned earlier, that the AFA, the American Family Association, has been labeled as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And they are located, I believe, in Mississippi. So if we can sort for Mississippi on the map, and it takes a second for it to load, There we go. So, and you can see the American Family Association, because it's alphabetical, is actually at the top of the list of hate groups headquartered in the state of Mississippi. And look, it's not considered a hate group because it's Christian. It's not considered a hate group because it's conservative Christian or fundamentalist. It's considered a hate group because it is anti-LGBT, and it has its own profile page on the Southern Poverty Law Center website. And you can see it's spelled out quite specifically. The reason why the American Family Association is considered a hate group by the SPLC is because it says it promotes traditional moral values, but a large part of that work involves combating the homosexual agenda through various means, including publicizing companies that have pro-gay policies and organizing boycotts against them. And then it has a section of the AFA's position against gay rights in their own words. Here's a good one, said by Brian Fisher himself a few years ago. Homosexuality gave us Adolf Hitler, and homosexuals in the military gave us the brown shirts, the Nazi war machine, and 6 million dead Jews. That's what the AFA thinks of gay people. That's why they are listed as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, the AFA accuses groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center or the People for the American Way of being anti-Christian bigots. But the AFA itself is not only an anti-gay group, but they engage in anti-Islamic fear-mongering and demagoguery. They do everything they can to stoke fear and intolerance and suspicion of Muslims in the minds of their supporters and the audience for their various forms of media, their radio shows and online video shows and things like this. They are guilty of the very crime of which they accuse all of these organizations on their ridiculous AFA anti-Christian bigotry map. The only crime that these organizations have committed is to not be as ardently fundamentalist Christian as the AFA. The mere expression of a differing opinion, the mere advocacy for pluralism and for religious equality among all faiths is enough to earn an organization a spot on the AFA's bigotry map. That's what bigotry is to the AFA, to this group of anti-gay, anti-Muslim Christian zealots. That's what they consider to be bigotry. I'm an atheist. I'm open about that. I'm outspoken about that. I'm proud of that. I don't always succeed, but I try very hard to keep my tone civil, and I would rather promote cooperation between atheists and religious folks whenever possible. I think that's the best way to go for a free and open and prosperous society. I don't want to think of myself or to be thought of as an enemy of religious folks, of Christians or Muslims or Jews or any religious group. I don't want to think of myself as an atheist as the enemy of those people. And indeed, if you are a religious person and you feel that your faith is calling you to act out in charity or to stand up and advocate for the less fortunate, and it calls you to be a more moral, more open-minded, more empathetic, giving person, I want you to be my friend. I would like to think of myself as your friend, but I would really hope that I can make myself an enemy of the American Family Association and any organization that uses their faith, whatever that faith may be, as an excuse to impose a limited, narrow-minded, hateful ideology and set of rules on other people, and to tell other people how they ought to live because they think that they have a hotline to God telling them how things should be. I have nothing but contempt for that, and I would hope that I can be an enemy to any organization that promotes that sort of thing.